In this video, I'm going to share exactly how I have set up a project management workflow to manage a podcast. This system allows me to have everything organized, including episode information, guest information, video files, audio files, tasks, and even custom automations to help this whole process run even smoother. It's actually not that hard to set this up, so let's jump right in. Before we get started, I do want to encourage you to check out and subscribe to the None of Your Business podcast. It's hosted by Doctors Sean Dill and Lacey Book. I have the pleasure of being the podcast manager and producer of that show. They bring on excellent guests, really amazing guests in the entrepreneurial space. And if you're someone who wants to learn about sales, marketing, and embracing the business aspect of your service-based business, I highly recommend that you check it out. I'll put the link down in the description below. Secondly, this project management workflow is built in ClickUp. However, any of the other project management softwares can do this as well. Now, the first thing that I want to showcase is the actual workflow using what are called statuses. Inside of this list in ClickUp, we have several different statuses. Let me show you what each one of them are. So here we have our statuses for this specific list inside of ClickUp. And you could think of these as stages of the process or different milestones of the process. So the first one that we have is called submitted applications. Now this is where we have people submit an application to be a potential guest on the show. So anyone who fills out the form will get added to this stage. The second stage or status is called interviews scheduled. Now this is when we actually set a date using our calendar link and we have it on the schedule and it's upcoming. Once we get to the interview date, we actually record it on that date and we have a raw video file. Then we move the task to the recorded stage. Once it's edited and we have the full episode in audio and video format, as well as a few snippets from the episode, then it gets moved to the edited stage. After that, we take the edited episode and upload it to our hosting platform, which is Buzzsprout, and to YouTube. Once we've done that, then we can move the task to the uploaded/scheduled stage. And then lastly, once the episode actually is released, then we move it to this closed status, which is called released. One of the cool things is that inside of ClickUp, you can customize which each one of these are. We can add statuses if we want. We can move them around, change the color. And so you can have a lot of different statuses, or you can keep it really simple and just have a few like we have here. But basically what this does is allow us to look on the list and see exactly where we are, keeping everything organized, especially when you're in the process of multiple different episodes. You might have several interviews scheduled at one time. You might have several that are in the process of being edited, or you might be well ahead, several weeks ahead, and you can have them uploaded and scheduled, but not released yet. So having those statuses in a way that makes sense for you and your process and your workflow allows things to be really simple and easy. What's also great about ClickUp is that once you have created these different tasks, they stay in here forever. So it's a great place to save data and information. You can come back and reference any of these past episodes or guests. Let's take a peek into the task level where we store a lot of useful information. So this is what a task looks like. And I know there's a lot of information here, but let me go through it all and I promise it'll make sense. So at the top here, we have just what's called the task name inside of ClickUp. And for the purpose of producing and managing this workflow for the podcast, I simply have just the name of the guest. And so for this one, we have Tim Story. Make sure you go and check him out. Secondly, this box here is the description, and a lot of information gets placed in here that will end up being in the description or the summary for the podcast itself, the show notes, if you will. This middle section here is called the custom fields. This is a really powerful tool inside of ClickUp. I love using custom fields. It helps to keep things like links and information organized, and also a great place to come back and reference any of this information when you need to in the future. There's two main categories of custom fields that we have, and that's for the episode information and also the guest information. When it comes to episode information, we might have a link for where we're recording it, the record date, and what date it's going to be published. I even have a Dropbox link to put the raw files as well as the finished files once they're done. So that way we can reference that, send it out to the guest. That includes the full episode video file, audio file, and snippets that we have pulled from the episode. I also have listed the episode title, a short bio, and when it comes to the guest information, we have all of their related social media links, YouTube channel, all of that good stuff that we will put in the show notes. Once the episode is released, then we'll also have the links, the direct links to the podcast. That way we can share that on social media posts or on emails, or even just a great place to come back and reference it if we ever need to in the future. And more recently, we have started sending out gift boxes, physical gift boxes to our guests that join us on the show. And we have started collecting mailing addresses so we can send that box to them. So we created a custom field for that as well. And as I mentioned, we pull different snippets from the main video, from the main interview. And so I always have these titles listed here, so that way it's easy for us to create those, and also anybody else working on those tasks can see and reference what we want to pull from the main video. Custom fields are really easy to work with. They're really easy to create, and these are the different categories of custom fields that you can add inside of the task. Again, it makes it so much easier to hold all of that information, come back and reference it, and it keeps it really organized inside of the task at the task level. And down here we have the checklist, and this is a very simple checklist just to make sure that every single time we're doing the exact specific things that need to be done to make sure that this podcast gets produced the right way and that it's released the right way, just setting a standard for every time that we have a podcast episode. And these are all checked off because they have been done, they're completed, but they're just some simple tasks that also get assigned to specific people. So that way you can see what's being done by who, and making sure that out of all of the things that need to be done, that they're getting done the right way, and you get notified once they are complete. There's also a place where you can upload documents and files. So different images or the video files can be stored inside of this task. On the right side is a place where ClickUp holds different updates related to the task. It's also a place where you can write comments and work with other people on this task. And if you're working on this yourself, this is another great way just to make sure that you're consistent with each step of the process. That way you don't miss anything, and that each episode is done exactly like the previous one was. And so you can see, just by having a few of these things set up, even if you're working by yourself, you're the solo producer of the podcast, you're the podcast manager, producer, all of that. This can be very, very helpful when it comes to just the organization and the workflow. And if you set this up the right way in the beginning, then it makes it a lot easier for you to delegate some of the work. And once you have your process down, you can document it and have everything in one place so that it's easy. And it just doesn't require so much effort every time that you want to produce a podcast episode. This used to take me hours and hours to produce one podcast. Since implementing this workflow, it's made it a lot easier and a lot more efficient week in and week out. As a bonus, you might want to add some custom automations to your workflow. And this is where some of the power of automation comes into play. For example, as I mentioned, we have the status called submitted applications. And we have this form that gets filled out by people who want to apply to be on the show. And once they fill out this form, it automatically gets added to the ClickUp task. And it makes it so much easier to work with. So that's one automation. Another automation that I have set up is that anytime the task gets moved from either of the first two statuses, which are submitted application or interview scheduled, to recorded, meaning that now we have an interview that has been recorded and we now have a raw file, then it will assign two of the VAs that I have working with me to that task. So basically what that's saying is I don't necessarily need them to be assigned that task until an episode is recorded. Because we have so many applications and we might also have several podcast interviews that are scheduled but not recorded yet, they don't necessarily need to be assigned to those tasks. However, once we have completed an interview, then it's time to go to work on that. This is just a simple automation that adds them as an assignee once we have a recorded podcast. Another automation that we have is for when the episode is released, it creates a new task to send them a gift. So the way that the automation works is that when a task gets changed to the release status, it then creates a new task to mail a gift to the podcast guest. And what's really cool is that when you set up an automation to create a new task, you can add in relevant information from, I guess you would call it, the mother task. The new task that gets created will have a new task name called mail the task name. So in this case, it would be Tim's story, a none of your business gift. And you can use any of the custom fields that we have inside of the main task and use it in the newly created task. And what it does is it will create a new task inside of this other list called the Mail the None of Your Business podcast guest list. Then we can select a template if we need to, and also add relevant information to the description. And so in the description, it says, please send the None of Your Business podcast guest gift to the task name, which will be the person or Tim's story. And if we have his mailing address, it will also paste his mailing address into the description of the task. And we also have some other instructions if need be. It also sets a due date and it assigns it to the person who is in charge of taking care of that. Just with that automation alone, that makes it so much easier to have that work delegated or even just to organize it for yourself. I also have an automation set up for when all of the associated links to the podcast episode get imported into those custom fields. It will create a new task for me to send an email to the podcast guests with those direct links to the episode. It will also, I have this written up kind of like a brief little email, and it has the links associated for each of the four main places that we upload the podcast. It also will include that Dropbox link where the full episode audio, video, and snippets will be. And so this just makes it so much easier to share the assets and the information once the podcast has aired. And so automations are really powerful because it allows you to speed up the process of some of the repetitive things that you do on a weekly basis or every time that you produce an episode. It allows that to be systematized, streamlined, and automated so that you don't have to do every single little thing every time for each episode. So I love working with automations inside of ClickUp, and we also use some automations inside of Calendly and Zapier as well. So hopefully this video helped you when it comes to designing your project management workflow for your podcast. Again, if you're working on this yourself, this is a great way to stay organized. Or if you have a team or would like to work with the team moving forward, this is a great place for you to be able to see what's going on as each of the episodes are working through the process. If you want to learn more about podcasting, what microphone you need, what equipment, what editing software, how to set it up, where to publish it, I have created a full series of videos just around podcasting. Right here on the screen, you can click to check those videos out. Thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time, I will see you later.